Please help me welcome to the stage Director Michael Kleiman and Producer Michael Pertnoy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When I first got to Peru, I had a meeting with the Ministry of Education, who runs One Laptop Per Child there, and they told me about this village. They said in order to get there, you have to take a Air Force cargo flight that leaves every 15 days from Lima, and then you can take a boat ride about 10 hours downriver. They said you can stay in a hotel of 1,000,000 stars, they called it, because all you would see was the stars. There'd be no running water, no electricity, but there'd be the solar-powered internet satellite. And I said, well, take me there. How do I get there? So, that was just kind of going on a whim, and I got there and formed relationships with Robert and Lydia and her family, and they let me stay.
I can't take credit for spending time in the Amazon jungle or in the mountains. We did have this original scouting trip, and as a producer, Mike raised up was to be able to support our director, who was kind of embedding in these small villages for a long period of time. And I think the last time the internet worked in Palestina before it broke was a Skype call that Mike and I had, and then all things went downhill with the technology there. So I didn't see it with my own eyes, Palestina, but I did get to spend some time in Antuyo and meet the villagers there.
I just want to add that when Michael says support me from up here, one of our cinematographers bailed on me a Peruvian cinematographer bailed on me about 2 days before I was supposed to leave for the Amazon. And I had a crew of Peruvian producers who were helping me, and I said, please, I need a cinematographer to help me. And they were scouring, and no one was finding anyone, and I was supposed to leave the next day, and all of a sudden Michael sent me an email and said, oh, I found someone, you can meet him in an hour by your apartment. So
Good producer.
He's a good producer wherever he is in the world. So when I started getting interested in One Laptop Per Child, I reached out to Nicholas. I mean, it's very similar to what we showed in the opening of the film. I emailed Nicholas a little bit more extensively than the 2-sentence email I showed here, but basically asked him for suggestions. And at the time, One Laptop Per Child was operating very heavily in Peru, Uruguay, and Rwanda. And now Argentina, but those were sort of the three countries that were most dedicated to the program. And Peru had this beautiful geographical and cultural diversity that I really want to explore. The opportunity to be in two totally different cultures within the same country really spoke exactly to what we were trying to do in terms of speaking about culture in the film. So that's why we chose Peru. Well, first of all, what is a friend? I think, Bernardo has it right. A friend is someone you tell everything to. It's like your brother. And I don't think that we don't know that anymore, right? I think we still know that. It's just, we have to think about it. It's like, well, it depends what you mean about friend. And, it's, friendship is supposed to be one of those just sort of concrete things where you ask what a friend is, and I know, this is a friend, this is a friend. It's not, let me think about, depends on the context. So that's what, the point I was trying to make, I guess we were trying to make with that. In terms of how I felt about it, yeah, I mean, I think generally it's a great thing, right? And I think what you see there more than anything is their desire for it, right? They know, it's not like, when I got there, as you saw in the film, I don't know if you noticed, but the first day I met Lydia, she's wearing a Yankees t-shirt, right? So it's not like they're totally isolated and have never heard of this thing called the internet or email. They know about it, and they know they're missing out on it, or at least they feel they're missing out on it, and they want to be connected to it. And what was jumped out at me was, the first thing that happened when they got connected to the internet wasn't about necessarily, let's jump to Wikipedia, or let's jump to, the New York Times or whatever it might be. It's, let me email my sister who I haven't spoken to for a year, or, let me see pictures of my cousin who's in the Army. And that ability to connect with other people, communicate, I think is really, really powerful and gets underestimated, I think, sometimes. But yeah, I mean, you look at what we have now and this sort of uber-connected world, and it is a little too much sometimes. And you can't help but feel nostalgic for, what are we getting them into? Do they have any idea? But it's also not for us to make those decisions for them.
I think in a lot of ways, while making the film, we all constantly felt the push and pull of kind of where do we stand on this issue, and trying to, for as much as we could, to kind of stay out of putting our own thoughts and feelings and letting the folks in the film really, both in Peru, speak to what their own desires are for the technology, but also people in our world, which I think bring to light some of the anxieties and about being uber connected and kind of being always on and wanting to take a step back. I know Mike and I, while making the film, had to think a lot about how we were going to change our habits and how we wanted the film to really be a way to just have a greater discussion about how we use technology and maybe how we should stop using technology sometimes.
So in August, I had an incredible opportunity to go back to Peru, to Antuyo and Palestina, and show them the film. That was something I promised them I would do before I left, and I wasn't sure if it was something that I would ever be able to do, but I told myself I was going to hold myself accountable to that. And fortunately, an opportunity came up in August, and the U.S. Embassy down there, which supported the film, paid for me to fly down. And it was awesome. So we're calling this the world premiere, but the real world premiere of Web happened in a small house with Lydia and her mother and her father, and it was just the four of us watching the film together. And that was an incredible moment. And I got to show the film in Palestina. We had sort of, the whole community huddled around watching it, and I showed it to Bernardo and Roy and their family. Bernardo and Roy have an older brother who I never met, who's living in Lima, and he has had a son who I met who's about 7 months old. And they, he was there, and they gave me the baby. They said, "Do you want to hold him?" His name's Michael. So it was just a great trip. And I'm actually, Lydia is my Facebook friend now. So the people in Palestina I'm able to communicate with. The people in Antuyo, they don't have internet access. They have cell phones, but they don't always work. So I tried to call Mauricio this morning to tell him about today, but I couldn't get through. So sometimes, I hadn't spoken to them for about almost a year and a half or so when I went there, and I had no way of telling them I was coming, so I just kind of showed up. And it was just a great way for me to let them know. It's sort of beyond all this ability to communicate with people. You realize sometimes you just can't. So I told them this time, I said, "Listen, I don't know if I'll ever be able to come back here, and I'm going to try to call you whenever I can, but just know that I haven't forgotten you and that I'm thinking of you." And so there's ways this film, I think, has taught me a lot about what it means not to be able to communicate.
I'm out in the world, I'm out in nature, and I'm really trying to find myself connecting with the world outside of me when I have the constant buzzing in my pocket and I have these constant distractions. So I think as we were making the film, I think the style that Mike and I always have been drawn to is really trying to find really strong visuals as aesthetically charged, so to tell the story. So you can really feel like you can smell and feel and just really get a sense for what the surrounding is. So I think personally, as we started to make the film and kind of cut it together, that was starting to feel like the dominant. You started to feel like people were in our world much more chaotic, much more all over the place. Whereas in Peru, there was this kind of quiet, silent, like sacred space that we were both drawn to.
So in terms of how people there felt, I think there was definitely a very large feeling of there's a lot of, like, they wanted electricity, they wanted a road. So yes, there's definitely this, at least especially to the older, the parents, it's not, "Great, you gave us the internet, we're all set here, thank you." It's, "Thank you, but there's other things we'd really need." I think what's really complicated about the road issue, which is something I learned down there, is Palestina is in Alta Perus, which is a national park in Peru. So if they built a road, they would be destroying a lot of preserved rainforest land. So there's a lot of environmental organizations that would fight that. And you tell yourself as someone who believes in preserving the environment, yeah, no, I don't want to knock down a huge part of the rainforest for a road. And then living there, and you hear things like this, like we live in a prison. You realize you don't really have to live there, So I want to preserve the Amazon, but I also want to be able to drive places, and I don't have to live without a road. So I think those are really complicated issues that are going to take a really long time to work out. So I don't see, my personal view is I don't see the internet as being given in place of a road, and I don't think we should take that. So they got the internet, so great, but it's the idea that you don't have a road, so you shouldn't have the internet. I don't understand that argument so well.
So the question is, what did he learn about himself coming from New York and living in a small village in Peru?
That's a very good question. My mom just laughed, apparently. What I learned about myself is that I do have I've always sort of thought that I had a good ability to empathize with other people and to really commit to seeing the world from their perspective, and this was a real lesson in doing that. And I learned maybe that I did have that sort of innate ability to begin with, but this really sort of honed that. And just being able to sit there in conversation and hear their questions and see their lives and kind of take part in it, not just witness it, but be a part of it, I think really taught me to always take a step back, see the world from someone else's perspective, and then think about it. Even in issues that you don't agree with them, I think you can't start to come to any sort of agreement until you're willing to recognize that they have a point and see things from their perspective a little bit.
So you are the first non-Peruvian village audience to see this film. So please use your technology for good. Go on Twitter, Facebook, the World Wide Web, and write about it and tell all your friends. We are so delighted to have Michael Kleiman, Michael Pertnoy. They'll be available in the lobby, so feel free to ask them all your unasked questions in the lobby after the film. And thank you so much for bringing us web.
Thank you.